Broadcasting live from Corey Mountain Monastery on the plain of Tarkir, this is Tap Tap Concede. Welcome, everybody, to Tap Tap Concede. My name is Graham. Joining me this week is Wheeler.
Thank you for having me, Graham. It's great to cast my second spell of the turn, generating a 1/1 monk with prowess, and then attaching myself to it.
Terrific. Before we get into discussing the recent ban and restricted announcement, mostly banned, we want to remind you all that this show is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Check out cardkingdom.com/LRR for all of your needs. Some of these cards we talk about today might be cheaper than before, so maybe get those for some reason. I don't know. They're not banned in every format. And want to talk about Dragon Shield. Use the code LRRMTG5 to get yourself 5% discount on Dragon Shield. And, of course, most importantly, this show and everything that we do is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon or by becoming a member of this YouTube channel. I forgot to also mention, if you ask Card Kingdom for a button, they'll send you a button. Say, loading ready run, send me a button, please. And they give you a little button. And it says a funny thing. We're going to talk about the standard bans.
Okay.
There was a big... I know people were afraid that nothing would happen, but some people predicted that a few things would happen. But several things happened. More than predicted things happened.
Well, yes. Yes and no. Yes.
All right.
I believe our take on the show, and by our I mean me, was like there's a couple of avenues they can go, which is just get rid of Monstrous Rage and Quarry Steelcutter and call it a day. Do nothing. Or ban a whole bunch of things because you want to force people to play with new cards.
Yeah.
And they did that New Game Plus.
Nice.
Like they were like, yep, you need to play with new cards, and you really need to play with new cards.
So I guess to start off, to catch everyone up, I'm going to open by saying something that I've been hearing people say since I started playing Magic, which is standard right now. It's not great. Now, to be clear, I've also been hearing people say standard actually really good right now the whole time as well.
Yes.
But it vacillates wildly. But we did talk last episode, I think, about how the Pro Tour Top 8 was 4 mono red decks and 4 blue red decks that were essentially identical. The 4 decks in each category, and that was on the back of a couple cards in particular. I know that I think it was even last time that there was some sort of ban announcement. People were hoping that Monstrous Rage would have something potentially done to it.
Yes.
And that has now happened. So let's start there. Let's start with Monstrous Rage, because this is the one that has had the longest, potentially cast the longest shadow. There's other cards here that have been around for as long or longer.
Right.
But Monstrous Rage was sort of the nexus of people's ire, I think. So it's from Wilds of Eldraine, single red mana for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and you create a monster roll attached to it. The monster roll, remember these are the token creature enchantments. Monstrous specifically is +1/+1 and trample. So the creature is going to be +3/+1 bigger than you were expecting it to be, and it has trample, and it's only for a single red mana.
Yeah. But the +1/+1 trample being permanent.
Yeah, that part just doesn't go away.
But also being permanent as an enchantment, like as quite literally a permanent. So a game object that you can also interact with in small ways, but they all add up a lot. This is the thing about some of these cards, is that really there's a bit of an over-tuning issue in Magic the Gathering in recent years, where this is you look at this card and you're like, this is just a pump spell. Like, why would you?
What's the big deal? It's 1 mana and you get some power and toughness. I mean, yeah, we've seen this. What's the problem?
And there is a more modern more modern approach to abandoned restricted lists, where it's like, just because it's just a pump spell doesn't mean it won't be the target of our banning if it's the correct thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is just a pump spell, but what it signifies is that you cannot block. Like, you just can't block in this environment.
Because
right?
if they have even 1 mana open, you're just like, well, they could have it.
You have to accommodate for Monstrous Rage in your defensive plays and your aggressive plays too. You can't, if you're going like, well, I'm going to make this big attack and I'm taking this amount of damage on the crackback. And then they're like, actually, just kidding. You're taking minimum +3 plus any of the, oh my God. It's not prowess. It's not heroic, but it's a third different thing. Valiant?
Valiant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. A lot of the decks that get played, like, is it prowess? Also just, is it prowess didn't necessarily play the Valiant cards, but like the Gruul prowessy decks or the Gruul pump spell decks that had some of the same names play those cards. I digress. This card basically just says like, hey, you are taking a bunch of damage on the crackback. If you block, you now have to block as though I have a Monstrous Rage, which costs a single mana. That's the big thing. It's like, what if you could warp the entire play pattern of a turn or a game just by having a single mana? And not in the way that, like, I got to play around them having Lightning Bolt or killing my creature. It's just like, you can't block, you can't attack, you can't, in certain cases, you can't deal with a creature for fear of Monstrous Rage. Like, red removal can be obsolete if the roll token puts it out of bolt range. Air quotes bolt range. Puts it out of cut down range, which is pretty big. Like, this is cut down a 1 mana black removal spell that is pretty popular in the environment. Can only kill something if it has power, toughness, combined power and toughness. Destroy target creature with total power and toughness 5 or less.
Right.
A monstrous roll effectively will give it +3/+1.
Yeah.
So
there's
if you have a 1/1 and you target it with this, no cut down. Right. So it looks like it's just a pump spell. But actually, it is a protect my creature, make it so you can never block, make it so you always have to think of this in your damage calculations when you're getting aggressive, all these things. And one of the best ways to beat that kind of effect, especially at 1 mana, is ignore it. Just accept that it'll happen.
You just have to assume that it's going to,
Or you're that guy. You are the Monstrous Rage player,
right? Which
people did.
Yeah.
And
a lot.
Yeah.
That was the number one deck archetype at the Pro Tour.
Yeah. It's
and you did talk that, like, the Pro Tour, it's important to know that the Pro Tour is not necessarily the representative metagame of all of Standard everywhere.
Right. For sure.
It's a specific tournament and people are like, what am I going to bring to this tournament? But it's never a good look when it's like, almost half the field is on one deck.
Also, not to say that there's a common misconception that aggressive red decks are brain dead. And they really aren't. No Magic the Gathering deck is brain dead, outside of Boros Energy. But that's not even true. But boy, do I hate that deck. But it's, you have to factor in all those situations I talked about previously when you're playing with or against this deck. But still, the floor is I play creature, I cast burn spell, I use pump spell. That's very appealing to players who don't have time to dedicate towards getting better. They can just get faster.
And
right, so it'll be a popular deck no matter what. Right? It's mono red. There's always red deck wins.
I should have said at the top of the show, obviously, that I am, not up to speed on Standard. So this is sort of Wheeler is, role of the expert here, which I appreciate. You mentioned being able to utilize the fact that Monstrous Rage leaves behind an enchantment token. What? How was that? Even if it's small corner cases.
Yeah, primarily Torch the Tower, a removal spell from Wilds of Eldraine that deals 2 damage for a single red, but if it's bargained, which requires you to sack an artifact, enchantment, or a token, it instead deals 3, and you scry 1, and also the permanent dealt damage by this, if it would die, it gets exiled instead.
So then it leaves you something else to sacrifice that's not your creature.
Yes.
Right.
And in certain other situations, although this can backfire in a way, it is a permanent for this town big enough for the both of us, or whatever this town ain't big enough, which we'll get to that.
Okay.
But yeah, little things. It's just, in the past, that card may have been +3/+1 in trample and just end it. And that's still very good. But the fact that it permanently has +1/+1, and that's something that like a game.
And it permanently has trample.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been like I said, Monstrous Rage has been building for a while as a problem, and it seems to have finally come to a head.
Right.
And then in the same deck lists, certainly since Tarkir Dragonstorm, we have the Cori Steel Cutter. Which is the 1 in a red equipment. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 and trample and haste. And then flurry, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you make a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess. You may attach the equipment to it. And you can also just pay 1 in a red to equip it, though that I feel like that doesn't happen as often.
But that's the part of but it can.
Yeah.
And it does when you have, this card did show up in red deck variants, the mono red variants. But also was one of the driving forces behind Is It Prowess, the other half of the top 8, basically. And while the Is It Prowess deck has other cards to take advantage of, playing a bunch of cheap spells, especially ones that replace themselves, it also has cards like Vivi. And Vivi can add a bunch of mana and can get very big. And it's cool to give your very big creature trample to allow you to push it through, as well as maybe using some of that excess mana for an equip cost. Right. So you can, and that's with your Vivi. Even outside of that, it's just sometimes you want to give something else trample. But this card is nuts. I mean, it's so good. It's just, you're dying to the creatures, but you need to remove the cutter.
Right.
And that doesn't stop you from dying to the creatures.
And that also forces you to make sure that you have artifact removal.
Yes.
Whereas you'd rather just use the more versatile removal to kill the creature, but then as you say, you've still got the cutter sitting around, and the cutter can just make its own creatures.
Yeah. Yeah, and it often players will play the cutter in a way in which they can reap immediate value out of it, right? You're not always slamming cutter on turn 2, waiting until turn 3 to play cutter and then play a burn spell to kill your blocker, or playing anything. This is something that I personally have an issue with when it comes to modern design, whereas people joke about how cards don't have downsides. And this is, in a way, a downside, but for me, it's more, cards are not nearly as particular as they used to be. Where I can understand, for the sake of limited, the flurry mechanic, right? It makes sense to have it be based around casting multiple spells. Yeah. Just spells. Despite the fact that it feels like a card and often plays like a card that benefits mostly from casting multiple non-creature spells, right? Prowess being the big one. Kiln Fiend kind of We Dragonaut style effects also being pretty reminiscent of this. And the fact that the Cori Steel Cutter just triggers off of anything is bonkers.
Yeah, the flurry is any spell.
Yeah, because a weakness of some of these decks were that you had to play a certain amount of creatures and a certain amount of non-creatures, right? You needed the spells to flip your Delver, but you needed the Delvers because your spells don't do it on their own. That kind of mentality. But now if you have a draw with a Cori Steel Cutter and a bunch of creatures, that doesn't matter. Right. You're still going to get tokens off of this. Yeah. The same can be said about Vivi. Another backbone of the prowess strategy is that Vivi has has a triggered ability that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a counter on it, deals 1 damage to each opponent. Yeah. And then you can activate a 0-cost ability to add X mana of any combo of blue and or red where X is Vivi's power, and you can activate it only during your turn and only once per turn. This is an effect that I was talking about this today to some people where, doesn't it feel wild that you can use that mana on anything?
Yeah.
Like it's a
I,
mage, right?
I assumed it would only be to cast instants and sorceries.
Exactly. That feels like a way that feels fitting of like, oh yeah, you have this little wizard
Yeah.
that like grows bigger when you cast non-creature spells and then makes a bunch of mana to cast anything.
Yeah.
Just to cast your, I don't know, your screaming nemesis or your second copy of Vivi, whatever. Like, it's not a great idea, but
Yeah.
it's the removal of like specifics that make some of these cards as busted as they are, and that's why Corey Steelcutter is one of those cards where it's like, yeah, you just don't have those awkward draws anymore that would have been a reasonable limiter. And so you have a card that you have to deal with it, which is more difficult. And if you don't deal with it, you are going to die to the tokens it makes. And even if you do deal with it, the tokens still stick around. And yep, those two were the big ones. They were the like these are like you look at the Pro Tour and you're like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. These should be dealt with.
Yeah.
And that's good.
And then still, I think from one of those decks, almost not typically brought up as a problem card, but sort of catching a stray, I guess, is Heartfire Hero.
I would, if you did admit that you don't play a lot of standard.
Yep.
This card's a problem.
Okay.
So
this card was very cool in Bloomborough Limited.
Oh.
But I got the impression that when they were like, and Heartfire Hero, that folks were like, oh, yeah, okay, good, sure.
Yes.
But not like, it's not in the same way that people had been, like setting up a please ban Corey Steelcutter and Monstrous Rage, like candle circle.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone necessarily expected Heartfire Hero to also be on the chopping block.
There was discussion about another card from Mono Red being axed. The two big cards that were in talks were, one of them was Heartfire Hero, but it did not receive as much conversation as Manifold Mouse. Manifold Mouse being a 2-mana 1/2 that has Offspring for 2 that says at the beginning of your combat you can have target mouse get double strike
Or trample. Yeah.
until end of turn. And so as you could see, this card was, say, the Heartfire Hero or the Emberhearth Challenger, which is another mouse from the set. Basically, Bloomborough did the, like, I was going to say Mirrodin, where they're just like, hey, you want a busted deck? Here you go. Here's all the cards. We did it for you.
Put all the mice together.
Yes, yeah. If you put all the mice together, you will kill people.
It's the Heartfire Hero. We didn't read it out, but it's only a single red, and it has, as Wheeler mentioned, the Valiant ability. That's just the first time it becomes the target of something. On each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. But then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Okay. And then, as you said, the Manifold Mouse, especially if you cast it with Offspring, then you get 2 mice that freely target. And so that just is like free every turn. You're growing your Heartfire Heroes. And then eventually, it's a situation where it's like, hey, I'm attacking you with this 5/5. Do you take 5 or do you trade for it and take 5?
Or do you try to block and then I hit you with the Monstrous Rage?
Yeah. And then maybe you take 3 and then take 5.
So that sucks.
Yeah.
Manifold Mouse is a card that has a little more texture to it. There are more decision points of, do you play it as a 2-mana card? Do you wait for a 4-mana card? Do you target it with Double Strike or Trample? Like, some of these are a little, well, I'm going to pick the one that kills them quicker.
Yeah.
And that's pretty straightforward. But there are a bunch of decision points with this card. And the play patterns are kind of interesting. Obviously, it plays better with other mice as well.
Yeah.
And I imagine we'll talk about this a bit later, but the post-banning Boros mice deck is still a deck you can play. It is still a deck that has, within the past week, put up plenty of 5-0 trophies. Plenty of people are like, yeah, I'm top 100 Mythic. Here's my Boros mice deck. I did the same thing that I did pre-ban, where I looked at the mice and I put them all in one deck, and they did the thing.
So that deck only lost Heartfire Hero, I guess.
And Monstrous Rage.
Oh, okay. Of course.
And potentially Corey Steelcutter.
I guess, of course, if you were going to be running a deck with red, you'd be running Monstrous Rage.
But they are
probably.
kind of pushed to play more cards that I would imagine the future league testers and R&D would have been playing with or hoping people would kind of gravitate towards. Right. But the Hardfire Hero is just like, it's just a 1-drop that gets huge right out the gates. You played a tap land on turn 1, a totally innocent thing. Well, you're an idiot because now you're dead. You're taking, I Monstrous Rage this thing, and you are taking 5, and then if you kill it, you're taking at least another 3. But you also can't cut down it. So you're going to have to use 2 mana spells to deal with this card. Which you've used 2 mana to deal with 1 mana, and I've already dealt 5 to you. So my 1 mana, admittedly I use 2 cards, but 2 cards deal 5 damage that also require you to use 2 mana that might also end up in you taking an additional 3. You can see why this is bad. Right? It's not the economy of all these cards is a little messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's 3 red cards.
Great.
We banned 3 red cards. Great. Format solved.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not as though there were only those 2 decks in the format.
Yeah.
And in fact, there were quite a few other very powerful decks running around. It's kind of the case of over the past couple of sets, Aetherdrift, Dragonstorm, and Final Fantasy, you have these cards coming together that actually make the Is It Prowess deck really powerful. Right. Stock Up, Vivi.
Oh, yeah.
These cards that are just wow. And one of the ways to counteract that is to just go faster. Just kill them before their Vivi can get off the board or whatever. And going faster is also a pretty good way of dealing with some of the other decks that before the Is It Prowess really got their Vivis and their stock ups and like found its footing. They were top dogs like Dimir mid-range, like the Kaido deck or like a blue-white control deck, or the Esper Pixie. But, they still just died to go fast. So the Prowess deck kind of pushes some of them out of the way. Or it's this, cascading effect of like Prowess pushes one other deck out of the meta, which means that another deck that like was like, oh, well, thank God Prowess is dealing with deck C. Now I get to be the next best thing that isn't playing Monstrous Rage or whatever.
So they didn't want to be in a situation where they go, okay, those are the most powerful decks. We're going to nerf those decks by taking these cards out. We've now replaced the obvious most powerful deck with the next most obvious powerful deck.
We're just back where we were.
Yeah, just
which
with different cards.
Is not great.
No.
Some of those decks remain what they were previously. Right. Like they did not really take as much of a hit, but some of the problematic cards with play patterns that are frankly rancid or that push all other options from a competitive point of view out of the way. Like, why do anything aggressive when you could just Monstrous Rage Hardfire Hero?
Yeah.
Right? Why do anything big when you should just play Up the Beanstalk? Right? Like, if you're trying to go bigger than everything, Beans is how you're going to go bigger.
So let's talk about Beans, because
Great.
Up the Beanstalk was also banned. 1 and a green from Wilds of Eldraine enchantment. When it enters, and whenever you cast a spell, I swear that said creature. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, draw a card.
Let me tell you how good this card is with Force of Will.
Because it doesn't care about the mana you spent.
Correct.
Just the mana value of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever you see people complain about how the Final Fantasy mechanic for is mana spent, it's because they're degenerates that want to draw cards off Beans, despite the fact they paid 0 mana or 1 mana or whatever.
See, I assumed. I mean, I think this is correct that they did that to cover the when you're doing like tiered spells, for example. It cares about the mana you spent on it, so that you don't, spend 6 mana on Thunder Magic and you don't trigger all these cards that care about spending 4 mana or whatever.
Yeah, it has merits in the context of the format. the limited format, which makes sense. That's that's a good way of designing cards.
Yeah.
And don't listen to the people complaining that they're not drawing enough cards off their beans.
So what did standard beans look like?
So Domain Overlords was the biggest one.
Right. That was at I want to say that was at the last high level competition, be it Pro Tour or it would have been the Pro Tour, and Domain Overlords primarily, I want to say green-white.
Yeah, you have
sort of all the colors.
All the colors.
That's what domain means in this context.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is built off of the back of Up the Beanstalk being a draw engine, and Zur the Enchanter and Esper Legend from Dominaria United being a way of saying, hey, I know my deck's a little slow, but what if all of my overlords were actually creatures that had hexproof and lifelink and death touch and some other text? Like, it's a wacky commander card, but
so because they're the Enchanter, which you reminded me that set is still in standard.
Or sorry, not Zur the Enchanter, Zur the
different Zur, the Zur from
he's got a goofy name. It's like Zur scheming demon or like Zur.
Hey, it's Zur the scheming
Zur demon. Eternal Schemer. That's
Schemer.
What it is.
All right, so it's white, blue, black for a 1/4 human wizard with flying. Enchantment creatures you control have death touch, lifelink, and hexproof. And then for 1 and a white, target non-aura enchantment you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and toughness each equal to its mana value. So the overlords, if you cast them for their not
the impending cost.
It's not suspend. They're still in play as an enchantment, but they're not a creature yet.
That's right.
And it's cheaper to do that.
Yeah.
So you get them in like that, and then you use Zur to just turn them into creatures anyway.
Let me paint you a picture, Greg.
Please do.
I cast Up the Beanstalk.
Okay.
I draw a card.
You draw a card.
Great. Easy. Turn 3, I play Overlord of the Haunt Woods, the green one, for 3 mana, which is a 6/5, impending 4. But when it ETBs or attacks, I make a tap colorless land token named Everywhere that is every basic land type.
Huh.
And I draw a card from my beans. So I've drawn 2 cards off beans.
Because you're casting the spell. You're only paying 3 mana to cast it, but you are casting a spell with mana value 5.
That's right.
That's messed up.
So now I have 4 mana, right? I untap, I play my 5th land. I cast Zur.
Yeah.
I then immediately pay 2 mana to make the Overlord into a 5/5 creature because of its mana value here.
Right. And then you attack and you get another everywhere.
And I attack and I get another everywhere. And I gain 5 life. And also it has hexproof and death touch. So now I get to untap. You can kill this Zur.
Yeah.
You can kill this. Doesn't matter. I've already drawn a bunch of cards. I've ramped myself and I've gained a bunch of life. Also, I might just play another Overlord. Maybe I'll play the Overlord of the Mistmoors that is massive, by the way. It's like 7 mana. You get 2/2/1 flying moths when it ETBs and attacks. And it's a 6/6. Oh, and I'll draw a card by casting this. So, the fact that I can only then cast, say, 1 spell a turn, which not true. Even if I am doing that, I get to draw a card. So I'm not just kind of draw, play spell, have it dealt with or countered, move on. Everything is just value. Combine this with cards like Leyline Binding, which, because of domain, because I have everywhere, this is not a 6 mana card. It is a 1 mana ETB, remove any permanent, but I also get to draw a card off beans. So you're understanding where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
What if all these cards drew cards?
What if every one of those cards also said, and you draw a card?
Yeah. Why you ever wonder why people gush about Baleful Strix? Because it draws a card and does something.
Yeah.
Drawing cards busted. So beans messed up.
Can you, in that deck, do you just, if you don't have beans in your opening hand, are you mulliganing every time?
It still has the play pattern of Overlord into another Overlord into, I guess now I'm going to Zur, maybe I'll cast a Droxa. Forgot to mention that deck also, there's a card from Aether Drift, Ride not ride down, ride on. It's basically, that's a Pokemon, Ben. It's like a 5-mana removal spell that can exile something, but it's cheaper if it targets like a tapped creature or whatever, which also draws a card up Beans. But also because it exiles Heartfire Hero is not drawing a card, whatever.
Good Lord.
And there might be some other stuff. Admittedly, I have not played this deck despite it being very wheeler. But this is, it's
incredibly weird.
Yeah, this deck's messed up.
Yeah.
Like it just has a Troxa.
So
that it casts on turn 5 or whatever.
Yeah, so it'll still do stuff without Up the Beanstalk. It's just not horrendous.
Yeah, now there's a cost.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
what a
I know.
concept.
Shocking. That's also with 1 copy of Beans.
Right.
What if they have 2?
What if they have 2 copies of Beans?
Yeah, what if there were 2 Beans?
The fact that it replaces itself, that it draws a card when you cast it, it's just like, it's so rude.
Yeah, so there's a reason why this card's banned in Modern, and also is like a viable thing to do in Legacy.
I forgot that it was legal in Standard because I thought that it had been banned in all the formats before.
It, much like Monstrous Rage, there was a ban announcement where people were very hopeful that exactly Beans and Rage were canned, and they weren't. And here we are, a year later.
Uncan those beans. Wait, no. Canned beans. So, okay. So that's Up the Beanstalk. They banned 3 other cards in this ban wave. This was a big one.
It was great.
Let's talk about Abuelo's Awakening.
Okay, so Abuelo's Awakening is X3 and a white for a sorcery. It says return target artifact or non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard to play with X additional 1/1 counters on it. And it's a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying in addition to its other types.
Okay.
So this card returns Omniscience. A card that was introduced into Standard for the next 5 years.
Thanks to
Foundations.
I did not realize there was an Omniscience deck in Standard.
So this was my deck of choice.
Oh, yeah?
A very unsurprising thing. There are a series of cards in the format that are pretty effective draw spells or selection spells that also put cards in the graveyard. There can be Moment of, this is where, despite playing countless hours of this deck, I forget the exact names of some of them. You have Charticourse, you have Flagi Archaeologist, you have Oracle of Tragedy, Moment of Elspeth's an Angel now, Spotlight card.
Right.
You have a bunch of ways of putting Omniscience into the graveyard. You then bring back Omniscience with Abuelo's Awakening, and now you have an Omniscience in play. And your deck is full of cards that draw cards and do a variety of things.
Omniscience, by the way, in case you're unaware, is supposed to be 10 mana, 3 of it blue. It's 7 blue, and it just says you can play spells from your hand for free.
Right. And this was a deck before the past couple of months. Like, this was when Omniscience was put into Foundations. This was discovered and was quite good.
Yeah.
And would do some wacky stuff.
So you just get it in the bin, you Abuelos on turn 4, and then you can just cast spells for free.
Turn 4 Omniscience.
Yeah.
And usually in Standard, people are casting spells. They're tapping out.
Yeah.
They're doing things. And if they're not, then they're playing like blue-white. And then they're just giving you time for you to sculpt your hand in your blue-white combo deck to maybe do it twice with counterspell backup. Or the fact that there's Grand Abolisher from the big score, a 2-mana 2/2 that says, hey, you can't play spells or activate abilities on my turn. And now Victory's Herald from Dragonstorm that just says he can't cast spells. I feel kind of bad because I spent like 4 mythic wildcards on Grand Abolisher, and then they printed a new one that's easier to cast, and it's like, oh, okay.
What's the one from Dragonstorm?
Victory's Herald. It's 1 in white for a 1/3.
Oh, yeah, with Mobilize.
Yeah, Mobilize too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that card's absurd.
Yeah. It's also messed up and limited.
Also from Dragonstorm, if we can pull it up, Meringue River Regent, or Merang. Marang, because this is one of the bigger innovations.
This is the one with the Omen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because initially, before Dragonstorm, one of the ways that this deck would set up a kill was using Invasion of Arcavios, which is a battle that tutors for an instant or sorcery from your deck, graveyard, or from outside the game. And you would create a loop where you would use either the Blue Season from Bloomborough or one of the there's a Duskmourn card that just returns a permanent from your hand, and you manifest, and you would just return the battle, replay the battle, return the manifest bounce spell,
Right.
and you make infinite manifests, and then your invasion would find a card that gives all your creatures haste from the sideboard, and you just kill them like that.
Wow.
But the Meringue River Regent, 6 mana for a 6/7 dragon that has an omen of Coil and Catch. 4 mana instant, you draw 3 cards, then discard a card. And then also has flying. When this creature enters, you return up to 2 other non-land permanents you control to their owner's hand.
So Coil and Catch lets you discard the Omniscience if you need it.
Yeah.
But then the Meringue River Regent is just, once you get the Omniscience, you're just playing a 6/7 for free, and you bounce 2 of their only things.
You could bounce their things, or you could bounce your own cards, including 1 other copy of Meringue River Regent, and then loop them with another ETB and do some cool stuff. So this card puts Omniscience in the graveyard, also loops to kill people, and then also you could just have the play pattern of, here's 4 dragons, I have multiple Omnisciences in play, and I have a handful of counterspells. Good luck. Like, what do you do? And this is on turn 4. So, yeah. Also, didn't mention it, that deck got Stock Up. Stock Up being an absolute busted card from Aether Drift that can facilitate these kind of decks.
Yeah, Stock Up was like Divination plus, wasn't it?
It's closer to Dig Through Time.
Oh, yes, that's the one. Yeah,
that
yeah,
you can cast multiples of.
I was right.
Yeah.
Yes. Which one's Stock Up
So
again?
Stock Up is 2 and a blue for a sorcery. You look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 2 of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it is 2 and a blue to draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
But much better than Divination.
Yeah, it's like if Divination saw play in Vintage. Like 4 of in Vintage, and that's normal.
Yeah, I remember seeing this one and thinking, that's wild. Huh.
Yeah, I was admittedly lower on this when it came out. I'm like, sorcery speed. Like, I'm Dig Through Time pilled. I'm like, wait a minute, but you just get to do this.
You just do
and I
it.
get to keep my graveyard.
Yeah.
And then in 60 card formats, you can play 4 of them. Yeah.
All right. So,
But Abuela's Awakening.
Abuela's Awakening.
Yeah,
Okay, so that card is still, or that deck is that deck still possible now?
Yes, because there are 2 other cards that are admittedly more expensive than this that can return an enchantment for the graveyard. Repair and Recharged, I think, is one of them from Brothers War.
Okay.
It's like 5 mana
All right.
that does this.
Right.
Which costs more, double white. That's
You make
something.
you
It'll
make a Power
rotate
Stone.
somewhat soon.
Okay.
Like, there's another one that I forget, but
So it's doable. It's just not as consistent and backbreaking.
yeah, you're just not ending the game on turn 4.
Okay. That's great. That's a good change.
Yes.
Hopeless Nightmare is also on the ban list.
Objectively the funniest ban of all time. One of
Okay,
them.
so it's a single black mana. This is also from Wilds of Eldraine. Single black enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. That seems annoying. When it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you scry 2, and then you can pay 2 and a black to sacrifice it. So you play it, they discard a card and lose 2 life, and then later you can put 3 mana into it to sacrifice it and scry.
Right.
Why is this particular? First of all, why is this? No, this is all the same answer. Why is this banned and why is it so funny?
It's very funny because if you look at this without the context of the other cards in the format, this is a common.
Yeah, I don't see the problem.
This is a common that you're like, 10 years ago, I would not have told somebody to play this in their limited deck, maybe, because it's like, it doesn't impact the board.
Yeah. When I looked at the ban list page, I'm gonna level with you. I looked at the Wizards ban list page on the day that this was announced, and I didn't like mouse over the or like tap on the things to bring up the full images of the cards because I knew what they did. And I saw Hopeless Nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think in my head I conflated it with Screaming Nemesis from Duskmourn.
Right.
And I just assumed it was more Red Deck Wins nonsense. And then later, before we started recording, I was like, that's not the card I thought this was. Why is this bad?
So there is an archetype, or was. I don't actually know if people are still trying to do this, but this was a core part of the Nurturing Pixie decks. You may have heard to them referred as Esper Pixie,
Okay.
but also Orzhov or Abzan Pixie.
Okay.
I really liked the Abzan Pixie list myself. Because basically there's a card called Nurturing Pixie from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. 1 white for a 1/1 fairy rogue with flying, and when it ETBs, you can return up to 1 target non-fairy, non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. And if that permanent was returned this way, you put a 1/1 counter on it. Fine Magic card.
Yeah.
So
I recall this from Thunder Junction.
Okay,
draft.
so let's play a game of Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
All right, great. I'm going to play Hopeless Nightmare on turn 1.
Okay.
Discard a card. So you start the game in 6 cards.
All right. And I've lost 2 life.
Yes. You draw a card, go up to 7, you play your land, you're back down to 6.
Land go, yeah.
I'm going to untap, and I'm going to play Nurturing Pixie to return Hopeless Nightmare to my hand. I'm then going to play Hopeless Nightmare.
Oh, I hate this.
Please discard your card. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you lose 2 again, you're down another card.
Yeah, I'm at 16 now.
Yeah, and so you're at 6 cards, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you draw up back to 7.
Yeah.
You play your land, go down to 6. You play a creature, and you go to 5.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm going to untap. I'm going to play another Nurturing Pixie to return my Hopeless Nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm going to replay Hopeless Nightmare. You go down to 4 cards.
Yep.
I'm going to hit you. Lose another 2. I'm going to hit you for another 2.
Yeah.
And then I might play a second Hopeless Nightmare, or I might play a cut down to kill your creature. So I'm playing all these cheap spells that are all trading up.
Yeah.
Because one
They
mana
really
card,
made 1 mana spells playable.
Yeah. And you lose your hand.
Yeah.
And that's if you kept 7 cards and you're on the draw. What if you're on the play and you mulliganed?
Ugh.
Yeah, you don't get cards.
No.
And you can combine this with Sun Spear Kirin from Dragonstorm. That is a 2-mana 2/1 flying flash creature that when it ETBs, you can return a card, a permanent you control to your hand. But also if you returned a token, you get to draw a card, which came up occasionally, but return your Hopeless Nightmare. And so you have 8 pixies plus this card ripping their hand apart. And cheap interaction, and you can't really do anything.
And was this the main, linchpin of the deck? Hopeless Nightmare in particular?
This was the part that made people go, "This sucks, dude." It is not fun. It's just.
I love the idea of at a tournament, be like, "Judge, yes, this sucks."
Valid call. Valid call. This is miserable.
Yeah.
And it kind of segues into one of the other cards that they banned pretty nicely because it did see play with both Hopeless Nightmare and Up the Beanstalk.
That's This Town Ain't Big Enough.
This Town Ain't Big Enough, which is 5 and a blue for an instant, and this spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a permanent you control, and you return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand.
So for 5 mana you bounce 2 of their things, but otherwise it's just Ether Trade wins.
But it can target not just creatures, right?
I thought Ether Trade wins was permanent. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think Ether Trade wins is one of those ones where it says exactly artifact, creature, enchantment, or whatever.
I can't
artifact,
remember.
creature,
This
land.
is from Zendikar.
Rise of the Eldrazi. Oh, okay. No, this is return target permanent you control and target permanent you don't control.
It's 3 mana. Okay, I thought there was one of these that was 1 and a blue.
So this is 3 mana, and you have to target. You target one of your things and one of their things.
Yeah.
This town ain't big enough. Can target both of your own things.
You can bounce both your own things.
Yeah, so I return my Pixie and my Hopeless Nightmare, and then I play the Nightmare and you discard, and then I Pixie return the Nightmare, and then I play the Nightmare and you discard. Or
so that's the Esper version of the deck.
Yeah. Or what if I just happen to play this card with Up the Beanstalk because it costs 5 mana?
Right.
So I cast this and I bounce your thing and I target my own beans and I draw a card off the beans trigger. Then I replay the beans because I return my beans and then I draw a card off my beans. Or I play Storm Chaser's Talent, the 1 mana talent that makes an otter with prowess. Yeah, it's
sorry.
It's okay. You're taking psychic damage on this. And then, which is a permanent, I get a prowess creature that likes me casting a bunch of cheap spells, and I get a permanent that made a creature, which I can then target with my beans, target with my
This Town
Ain't Big Enough, which buffs the otter. But also, then I can replay it getting another otter, and maybe I spend 4 mana to return an instant or sorcery from my graveyard to my hand, which would be This Town Ain't Big Enough.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So This Town Ain't Big Enough this is a card where they're like, okay, these play patterns are rancid.
Yeah.
Right? This and
Yeah.
Hopeless Nightmare, maybe both are a little over the top. Like banning one of them, I can understand. Even banning something like Nurturing Pixie and just saying, like, if you're going to do this, you are going to at least do it with Sunsteel or Sunspear Kieran. Or
The one that costs 2 mana.
Right. But we've already done this. If you played Standard last year, you've experienced this. And it sucked. And what do we get if we go back to it?
Right.
It's like, oh, thank God, I get how refreshing. This gets to suck while I look at Tifa Lockhart, right? Like,
we've done, good news. We banned Crystal Cutter and Monstrous Rage. Oh, great. Let me dust off my pixies.
Yes, exactly.
Bring that back.
Just play with new cards.
Yeah.
Play with new cards.
What was the difference? Because obviously the Esper variant was the one that ran This Town Ain't Big Enough. What did the Obzon variant?
Skirmish Rhino.
So you're using the pixie to bounce Skirmish Rhino?
You can return. I mean, admittedly, the Obzon version was also probably just a worse version of the Orzhov one.
Okay.
The Orzhov one, very similar, like Pixie, Kieran, Hopeless Nightmare. But you also just had other kind of mid-rangey cards like Preacher of the Schism. Which is just, it's just nice to be able to protect that kind of card, or maybe you return a token and draw a card off your Sunspear Kieran, and you just play a bunch of cheap interaction. But adding the green, you get the Rhino. Some versions played the Mosswood Dread Knight, which is like, you adventure, draw a card, lose a life, then you can play it, and then you can maybe return it to your hand if they try to exile it, and then you get to adventure it again and do, again, it's very masturbatory. It's not great, dude. It's really not great.
So, good changes, you'd say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
You said
much
that maybe they didn't need to do Nightmare and This Town. Maybe just Nightmare would be enough.
Yeah, there's a world where they can either put a damper on this archetype while still letting it kind of run around, but it's just, got to think of it less of an archetype and rather an interaction. And this interaction sucks.
Right.
And like, hope maybe they have something similar coming down the pipeline and they're just like, we don't want to have to just ban this later on. We can get rid of it now and just say, like, play with different cards. And I think that's an admirable goal to set out with. And I think it's one they accomplish because, if you look at the format right now, you do have decks that were popular before some of these decks really took over, or decks that were still popular alongside them. Blue-White Control, Mono-White Tokens, Dimir Kaido, the Gruul, like, prowessy deck is now just like Gruul, Pump Spell, Picnic, Ruiner, Delirium kind of stuff.
I was going to ask, gifted as you are with Prophecy, how do you see Standard, like, what would you, I mean, you were playing the Omniscience deck. You're going to keep doing that? You're going to look at something else? What do you think is set to thrive in this rage-free format?
Well, Graham, I think that the stocks will go up on my stock up. Stock up is a busted magic card.
Yeah.
Like, I'd probably play stock up. We've seen, I'd say stock up. Just play stock up. Like, you can play other proactive cards that are less dirtily than stock up, but like, I don't know. That card's just busted. We have Day of Judgment. Day of Judgment's in Foundations. Blue-White Control. Wow, what a pisser. You just get to stock up into Day of Judgment or Beza.
Oh, Beza from Bloomborough?
Yes.
Yeah. Beza from Bloomborough.
Beza from Bloomborough. That's kind of brutal.
It's like a 4/5 for 4?
Yeah, 4/5 for 4 with enough text to give a Victorian child an aneurysm.
Yeah.
ETBs, and you make a treasure if they have more lands than you, 4 life if they have more life than you, 2 fish, not tap, if they have more creatures than you, and you draw a card if they have more cards in hand than you. And it's just a 4-mana 4/5. So let's say you're an aggro deck and you've hit me, and I'm a control deck that, I tapped out for stock up. Oh, no, don't hit me. I divinationed. And then you're like, haha, actually, 4/5 plus 4 life, 2 more creatures. like this card is absurd. It's or Day of Judgment, whichever is better. You could just Day of Judgment. There's also Mana Leak that exiles in this format. People kind of forgot about that. No More Lies.
Oh, yeah, I definitely forgot about that.
Yeah, there's also Ultima, 5-mana Wrath that also blows up artifacts, which is really cool because
and then ends the turn.
Yeah, ends the turn. No triggered abilities for you. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, the mono white token control is just like sick, rancid 60-minute games. It's great. Just like you're just Elspething each other over and over again. The Golgari deck is always going to be a thing. There are some cool decks, admittedly. Like there's a Yuna Saga like Reanimator deck.
Oh, sweet. Like
That's
doing what the card says.
yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
This is Yuna Hope of Spira?
Yes.
Yeah, that card's very cool.
That card is messed up.
Yup.
But also, that has shades of the Omniscience deck.
Yeah.
But it tends to be has a game plan outside of the Omniscience, and also is is more fragile in a way that is satisfying.
Yuna Hope of Spira is, I want to say there it is. 3 green-white for a 3/5 human cleric. During your turn, Yuna and enchantment creatures you control have trample, lifelink, and ward 2. But critically, at the beginning of your end step, return up to 1 target enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Now, that can be any enchantment. It could be one of the overlords if you so desire. Yeah. But if you make it into if it's a saga. Right, she says enchantment creatures. That is the overlords.
Yeah, you are returning overlords, but you're also returning some of the cool saga creatures. And importantly, a lot of the lists that are putting up results are not necessarily returning Omniscience, which is good. I mean, you can do that if you want, but also that's 5 mana on a creature, and like it's just different. Right? That's the important thing, is they want people to do different stuff. There's still a really powerful blue-red deck with Vivi's, but it uses Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Like the Vivi Cauldron deck. Paulo Vito Damaderosa played it at the Pro Tour and had a pretty good conversion rate with it. And turns out that's a deck that's quite strong, and you can build it a couple of different ways. And that's dope. That's exciting.
Sweet.
Right? It looks to be a pretty cool format. We've seen like the Convoke decks come back. If you were sour about buying all those temporary lockdowns to play in your main deck, and you're like, no, now I can't. It's like, don't worry. There's still people playing Gleeful Demolition on their Clue token, and there's Boros Convoke, Jeskai, Mardu Convoke. Like there's, it's a whole new world out there.
All right. Very briefly, just to mention the other changes, Corey Steelcutter also suspended an alchemy until they do a rebalance on it. I'm curious to see what that looks like. Pioneer Best of One on Arena has finally gotten around to banning Tybalt's Trickery.
Are you trolling me? Are these real?
Yeah. Pioneer Best of One on Arena has its own call out, and it's Tybalt's Trickery.
Okay.
And then Historic on Arena banned Counterspell. Because it's in Final Fantasy, technically. It's on the bonus sheet.
Right.
Yeah. Wild Rose Rebellion is just Counterspell.
Okay, sure, why not?
Yeah. And no changes in Legacy. Well, I mean, no changes in other formats, too, but I know that some people were hoping for something.
Modern players deserve all the bad things that happen to them. Legacy players, I do feel for them. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a former Legacy player, but like...
But you got better.
Yeah, I cured myself.
Yeah. What's happening in Legacy right now that's a problem?
Oops.
Oh.
All spells. That's the big one.
Mm.
The Legacy, there are a lot of issues, and the Legacy community acknowledges that. That's part of the charm.
Mm.
It's just, it's too volatile. It's like, it's one of those things where maybe if every deck needs to play multiple pieces of main deck graveyard hate and also like artifact hate or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, realistically, if you look at a format, I'm just going to pull from, the stuff of my childhood, but like if your format requires every deck not running every artifact in the game to run 4 copies of Oxidize, which is 1 mana to destroy an artifact, and then just like your deck is 50% shatters and you're still going to lose, like maybe something's wrong. Maybe something's wrong.
I mean, I appreciate how fun it must be to be like, oh, the new sets come out, now in my eternal format, I have the breadth of all of Magic history and, what can be done with this. Like, I get that that's fun, but you do also have the situation where it's like, hey, the new set's out and there's this very tuned up uncommon that no one actually cares about. And someone in Legacy is like, oh, wait, this actually just ruins everything.
Yeah. Yeah, Balustrade Spy and, what's its name? Undercity Informer. 2 cards that are like, oh, these are kind of cool, Like, surely nothing bad could happen. I mean, it's not their fault. Realistically, it's the, Thassa's Oracle and the fact that decks actually have lands.
Right.
Your no lands deck now has lands. It's just, Bogart Trawler and friends. It's also just like the announcement for it called it like a very skill testing or like a very challenging archetype to pilot. And I too, if I got hit over the head with Ancient Tomb for 20 years, I might also have a difficulty of counting to 4, which is the requirement for oops. And then in sideboard, you have to count to 7. Now that's almost as much as 2 4s, but not quite.
It's wild that I remember when Balustrade Spy was released. That's so funny. And Understanding Informer. They're both from the same. They're from
the same block. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, good old Narcomoeba still calling problems, huh? Causing problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's always Dread Return.
Yeah. Oh, and Poxwalkers. Oh, good for 40K.
Great.
So cool. Broadly speaking, good changes to standard.
Great changes to standard.
Yeah.
Modern
forward to seeing how it
players
develops.
deserve what they get. Legacy players, my condolences. Vintage players, patient as ever.
Mm-hmm.
Pioneer players, Wizards has forgotten you exist and forgotten that Pioneer exists. But yeah, standard looks cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, I look forward to seeing the next the next sort of major event with it. See what happens.
Great.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's your lowdown on the latest round of bans, mostly standard. Wheeler, thank you so much.
Hey,
I don't know anything about this, but I love learning about it. I tell you what.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Magic 60-card formats are pretty cool. Well,
the deck feels so weird in my hands, though.
yeah, that part's a little weird.
Yeah. I'm used to either much bigger or slightly smaller decks.
Yes, exactly.
Until next time, I want to remind everyone again that the show is brought to you by our friends at Card Kingdom. You can put yourself together a 60-card deck. Why not? Get yourself some 4-ofs. Go to cardkingdom.com/LRR. We do recommend them because we think that they're a great bunch of folks to buy cards from, and excellent customer service, good shipping, all that stuff. You can also sell them your cards for store credit. We do that too. And tell them we sent you, and they'll give you a little button. Dragon Shield, use the code LRRMTG5 if you're buying anything from their storefront, and you can get yourself a 5% discount. And most importantly, everything we do here is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon or by becoming a member on this YouTube channel. If you haven't watched it, my Final Fantasy video is out. I've explained every Magic card, every card in the Final Fantasy set to people who play Magic and don't play Final Fantasy. Though mostly so far it's been watched by Final Fantasy people nitpicking me. So everyone else get on it. I knew it would happen. I'm not bummed about it. I knew that was going to happen. Until next time, I have been Graham, joined by Wheeler.
Thank you for having me, Graham. It was great to be here.
James on Tech, Heather Gets These Online. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.